This is Mac OS Ken.
IDC sees a switch in smartphone leadership, two-fisted fights over App Store commissions, and the series Sugar looks pretty sweet for Apple TV+. It is Monday, the 15th of April, 2024. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from Mac OS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/MacOSKen. Another market tracker has Samsung kicking Apple out of the top spot for smartphones last quarter. I told you last week of a report that had the South Korean electronics giant unseating Apple to become the world's leading smartphone vendor. Now market tracker IDC is IDCing the same thing. In a press release issued Sunday evening, the market tracker had Sammy shipping 60.1 million units for a 20.8% share of the worldwide smartphone market. That bested Apple's 50.1 million units and its 17.3% share. IDC offers no reason for the switch in places between the two companies, though the report mentioned last week did. That piece pointed out that Apple took the top spot starting in September of last year, coinciding with the release of the iPhone 15 line. Samsung reportedly took it back month before last, coinciding with the release of its Galaxy S24 line. Though keeping first and second, both phone makers saw shipments decline year over year, according to IDC. Apple was down 9.6% according to the firm, with Samsung down a much smaller 0.7%. Still, the smartphone market as a whole was up 7.8% by IDC's count. According to the firm, while the industry is not completely out of the woods, as macroeconomic challenges remain in many markets, this marks the third consecutive quarter of shipment growth, a strong indicator that a recovery is well underway. More legal tanglings and wranglings between Apple and Epic Games. Last month, says a report from Engadget, Epic Games filed a motion asking a California judge to hold Apple in contempt for what it claims are violations of a 2021 injunction related to the company's App Store practices. A month later, Apple has filed a counter motion arguing that Epic is trying to micromanage Apple's business operations and the Fortnite maker wants something for nothing. Or everything for nothing. Engadget says the 2021 injunction required Apple to let developers provide an option for external payment methods, which would allow them to avoid fees of up to 30% on App Store and in-app purchases. A piece from Apple Insider says what Apple came back with was an external purchase link entitlement that Apple says was meant to comply with the court's injunction. The thing is, that entitlement came with a number of rules, as well as charges of between 12% and 27% of the cost of transactions that come as a result of the link entitlement. Those amounts make the entitlement commercially unusable, according to Epic. The game maker has called Apple's proposed compliance a sham and accused the company of violating the injunction with its recent moves, according to Engadget. For its part, Apple says Epic's motion is its latest attempt to gain access to the iOS platform and user base for free. Epic does not even suggest an alternative amount that Apple should be allowed to charge developer for use of and access to its tools and technologies. In short, it's a day that ends in Y. Running along a similar line to the one run between Apple and Epic, a report from iMore says Apple's facing a sizable suit in the United Kingdom. According to the piece, the Cupertino company has failed in its bid to have a lawsuit valued at almost $1 billion dismissed after a judge ruled that it must face allegations that its App Store commission rules are unfair to more than 1,500 UK developers. The suit, led by competition law professor and economist Sean Ennis and filed at London's Competition Appeal Tribunal, argues that the 30% commission charged by Apple is just too darn much. And as the suit accuses Apple of abusing its dominant market position and seeks damages as a result, Apple had fought to have the suit dismissed, though a judge in the case says it can proceed. Where in the world is Tim Cook? Midweek last week, he was at the White House. Both Apple CEO Cook and Amazon founder and former CEO Jeff Bezos attended a White House state dinner last week, welcoming Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. A piece from Fox Business presented their attendance as notable, given that both Amazon and Apple have been the subject of lawsuits from the federal government. According to the report, Amazon was sued by the Federal Trade Commission in September over alleged abuse of power to drive up prices for customers, degrade service, and stifle competition. Of course, you know about the case against Apple brought last month by the Department of Justice. That's the one that accuses Apple of blocking innovative super apps, suppressing mobile cloud streaming services, excluding cross-platform messaging apps, diminishing the functionality of non-Apple smartwatches, and limiting third-party digital wallets. Asked about the invitations, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said Thursday that the White House invites an array of guests. It's an important night, especially when another country comes. Pressed further on Cook's invitation, Jean-Pierre said she could only speak for the White House and could not comment on behalf of the DOJ. There were lots of articles over the weekend about a new Game Boy emulator on Apple's App Store, though maybe they should have been about the scam that app seems to be. In light of a recent update to Apple's app review guidelines, game console emulators are now permitted in the App Store. Mac Rumors and Apple Insider each ran reports on the Game Boy emulator over the weekend. Called iGBA, both pieces say it looks like a copy of Riley Tested's open-source GBA for iOS emulator. Looks like that to the casual observer, and it looks like that to Tested himself. What's weird, or weird to me anyway, is Tested's anger. He is angry at Apple for letting the knockoff app into the App Store, and don't get me wrong, he should definitely be angry about that. In a post on Mastodon, Tested says he's upset that Apple took the time to change the App Store rules to allow emulators and then approved a knockoff of his own app, even though he's been ready to launch an updated version of that app since the 5th of March. The Apple Insider report says that update has been in test flight for a year, and that an App Store reviewer would have had the ability and time to compare iGBA with Tested's latest version of GBA for iOS if they knew to look. Again, I get his anger with Apple, but in another Mastodon post, Tested says he is not upset with the developer who submitted iGBA. That's despite the fact that developer submitted an app that Apple Insider says features location tracking when there is no game-related reason for it, and is replete with ads, according to users. All, it seems, without Tested's permission. Like an idiot, I downloaded the emulator based on the headlines alone. I saw the ads, and while I also saw descriptions for games, couldn't see any games. Maybe it was buckling under demand. Maybe action was being taken against the app. I've since deleted it from my iPhone. And finally today, the Colin Farrell detective series Sugar seems to be sweetening the Apple TV Plus lineup. 1 week into the title's run, Cult of Mac has the show showing prominently on the top 10 charts of streaming viewership tracking sites JustWatch and Reelgood. For the former, Sugar was the number 7 show for the week ending the 7th of April. That is a notable showing considering the show only premiered on the 5th. As for Reelgood, a few extra days gave the series a higher spot. For that service, Sugar took 3rd for the week ending the 10th of April. Sugar's not the only show sweetening the deal. The Kristen Wiig comedy series Palm Royale also had staying power. Cult of Mac says it ended its 6-episode run in 9th place for both JustWatch and Reelgood in the aforementioned time frames. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media. Online at backbeatmedia.com. You can reach me a couple of ways. info@macosken.com or call 716-780-4080. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Ciao.